Welcome back, everybody. It's IGN live at E3 2016. I'm Max Scoville. That's Justin Davis.
Hey.
You just saw him. And then, of course, Pete Hines from Bethesda.
Hello, hello.
Hey, thanks for coming by.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
For the second year in a row, you guys have come in and absolutely kicked ass with a wonderful presentation.
Yeah, it was
and, man, there's a bunch to talk about. Let's start things off with a game that we've been talking about sort of for a while. Not Prey 2, just Prey.
Just Prey.
What's the story here?
Prey is Arcane doing what they do best in a world that they were really interested to kind of explore and do their own take on. And what Arcane is known for is really immersive first-person games, system-based, meaning you have a lot of choice. It's not about scripting moments, but it's about scripting systems and letting players experiment with those systems and figuring out how they want to handle a situation, move through an area. And yeah, it's about being on a kind of a very different take on a space station and surviving aliens that very much want to kill you.
Yeah.
So is this, and I don't know how much we're going to be able to talk about now, but the trailer had a very sort of sci-fi horror Groundhog Day feel to it almost. Like, is that just sort of a mood piece for that trailer, or is that something that,
yeah, the Groundhog Day does allude to a particular part of the game that
Sure.
I won't talk a whole lot more about, but it does have a purpose. It does have context in the game. The psychological twist, the terror part, it's definitely not a horror game.
Yeah, well, sure.
It's definitely got a very heavy sci-fi element to it. But it's again, if you look at Arcane and what they've done in the past with a game like Dishonored, it's a very well realized, well thought out world that they place you in, and then a lot of player choice in terms of, all right, you're on board this space station, however you're going to survive is with whatever you can find, and giving the player lots of tools and sort of ways to make their own way through the game and kind of how they want to play and the way they want to approach different challenges.
And so we haven't seen the game properly in action yet. We got this very cool cinematic, but would you say that it feels similar to Dishonored, or do you think is it kind of...
Similar for sure.
Okay.
But it's definitely not just Dishonored in space. There are some things that it's doing maybe more of that than Dishonored does, and we actually spend a lot of time over the last couple of years talking about just that, sort of the ways that it's similar and the way that it's different. I think probably at QuakeCon, when we show the game, I think it'll start to become a lot more clear sort of what it's doing that sort of branches off a little bit from things that Dishonored has done. But fundamental to that is really immersive first person, that sense of place in the world, and kind of, you heard Harvey talk a lot about it in Dishonored, like the food that the people in the world of Dishonored eat, and the music and how people get to and from work. All of those things are a very big part of that immersive first-person stuff, and so a lot of that you'll see for sure in Prey, and it's not just a space station, but it's a very specific take on one and kind of what's going on there.
So you touched on this a minute ago, with kind of the aliens that aren't necessarily here to, they're not going to be our friends. A question that I had watching this trailer, I thought it looked great, and it's actually, we nominated it for Best Trailer of E3. You'll see that tomorrow. So I did love it, but I did sort of wonder, I'm like, this doesn't necessarily look like Prey. Like, I saw the game title come up, so is that something that we're going to see more about at QuakeCon or later on? Like,
for sure.
What makes it sort of a Prey game instead of just a very cool first-person game?
I think maybe a decent parallel would be if you go back and look at Wolfenstein, and you look at Wolfenstein pre-Machine Games and kind of what you knew of that franchise, and then you had these guys come in who say, look, we do very specific kind of games with a lot of character and story and blending different types of gameplay, and we want to take our approach to this world. I think some of that is relatable here to Prey, where they're saying, look, at a fundamental level, this universe is about aliens and a human, in this case,
sure.
Sort of under attack and trying to survive,
right.
And being the prey of these aliens. Beyond that, it's not trying to tie to a lot of other things maybe that were the first game's take on
Sure.
Prey, or even the second one that we had in develop and then ultimately canceled, that it was more about their take on this universe and aliens.
Now, so I think it's really interesting. It's sort of like what's the kind of core thesis of a franchise? Like taking. I think you guys did that incredibly well with Doom most recently. On that note, one thing we didn't really see coming was Quake Champions, which looks to be kind of doing the same thing. This doesn't look like Quake HD. This looks like a new game, but kind of trying to stay true to the core of the series.
And again, it's a great point. I was talking to somebody about that earlier, where the big part of Doom was it really going back and refining and distilling the original Doom games down to the very, very basic elements. And I think with Quake, you heard Tim say last night, he's one of the co-creators of the original Quake game, and it was taking that franchise and boiling it down to the very basics and building it up from there, which is super fast. You heard him say 120 hertz unlocked frame rate on PC.
Bonkers.
It is an incredibly fast game. A lot of verticality. You see in the trailer there, some of the vertical movement, each of the champions playing up the idea of being a champion, and each one has a different power, whether it's visor or ranger. So there's a lot going on there that is kind of back to Quake.
Definitely want to touch on that. One thing that wasn't a thing back when Quake first came out or grew to popularity was the whole sort of the hero shooter MOBA type of gameplay. The emphasis on kind of different kind of hybrid character class. Yeah. So I think people are wondering, is this going to be like something akin to Overwatch, or is this going to be like Quake, good old?
I just love to unpack a little bit what classes mean in a Quake context.
More Quakey Quake.
Okay.
To use a technical
you
term.
heard it here first.
To use technical vernacular. Again, I think it's one of those things that we're planning on talking and showing a lot more, and it's kind of my basic philosophy since I've been at Bethesda. I really prefer to wait until we can show the game before we start explaining it, because otherwise I do a lot of explaining in abstract as opposed to I'm explaining this and you're watching that and go, oh, I totally get it. But look, it's a fair point. It is bringing that element to the base Quake game that folks know, the base Quake experience, and trying to use champions as a way to help it evolve a little bit and help folks attach with it and sort of maybe evolve some of the play styles and choices that you make when you're playing the game as far as how you want to approach it.
And there was one little thing at the very beginning of just before the whole Quake thing started up. You had a nice little DOS screen. I got to ask about this. There's I believe that something about a Colossus in there.
Interesting.
And it's like a bunch of different names of Wolfenstein games, and then there's, what is it, the new Colossus? Or is it weird?
That is weird.
Do you have any other comment on that?
Man, that's weird. I have to go back and look and see that. I'm totally and completely surprised by that. I must not have noticed.
It's very sneaky. I actually do have one more Quake question. Is this going to be free to play? Are we looking at a premium title?
Yeah, we haven't said yet sort of what the business model is going to be or any of that. Again, it's one of those things. We felt like this was a cool time coming right off the release of Doom to talk about some of the stuff that id was up to next. But I think come QuakeCon, we're going to go a little bit more into depth on what we're doing and how we're doing it and that kind of stuff. So it won't be too long, couple months.
All right, and of course, Dishonored was kind of like the bell of the ball. We got to see that in action.
Yeah, goodness gracious.
Holy crap! Yeah. Where do we start here?
Yeah, where do you start?
I'm really curious about the size. This is a new engine. What's it called?
It's called the Void Engine.
Void Engine, and it's very pretty. And it's the guys at Arcane are. This isn't. You said it starts out in Dunwall, and then we're in.
It does. It starts and ends in Dunwall, so we sort of anchor you in a place that you're familiar with. Obviously, as Harvey showed you, Emily is now the Empress, and so it sort of starts off there, but the bulk of the game takes place down in Karnaca, and then it sort of resolves. So we wanted to kind of ground you in a place that if you play the original Dishonored that you were familiar with, but it also does a nice thing that if you don't play the original Dishonored and you start with Dishonored 2, that move to Karnaca is going to feel even more like, holy crap, I'm in a completely different place, much more Mediterranean and has a very different feel than what you knew in Dunwall.
So the first Dishonored, that was on an Unreal, wasn't it? Or was that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is like a new engine, new stuff under the hood, and obviously we're running on new consoles. Like we're not on kind of tethered by last gen.
Basically, it was it was a decision the team made right after Dishonored, as far as, all right, we're going to do the next one. What do we want to do? And one of the first things they said is, we really want to look at the engine that we're using and try and evolve that. And so what they actually did is they took the id Tech engine and did a lot of repurposing and building for what they needed to do in a very system-based, immersive first-person game that a Doom or a Wolfenstein isn't necessarily trying to do, because they're very different kinds of games. And so the reason it's got its own name is they've done so much work and changed it so much from what you see running, say, Doom, to make it purpose-built for Dishonored 2.
Okay.
So the impression that I got from the demo last night was that instead of being a completely open world, this was similar to the first game, where you would sort of go into environments that are very open, have lots of options for how to approach them, but it's still not, open in the sense that Elder Scrolls game is.
It's not Elder Scrolls or Fallout. It's not we just drop you in the world and then you go do stuff. Once you start off on a mission, you have we show you a little bit of one there where you're getting dropped off at the beginning of a mission off of a boat. But from that point, the idea is the freedom from there to go where you want, to do little side missions that you can find along the way. I think all those things that you saw and sort of enjoyed in Dishonored, it's a lot more of that, as well as exploring more of the ways in which you can play, because Corvo is back with his power, but there's all these ways to level him up, and then Emily comes with a completely different set of powers. And then this morning, Harvey revealed that there's a third way to play, which is no power. So you can, when you get, when you have your encounter with the, I just completely blanked.
I mean, that's wild.
In the Void, the Outsider. When you meet the Outsider, you can say, I've had enough of your games. I don't want your powers. He's like, okay, well, there's another surprise. And you can you can play the entire game with no powers whatsoever.
Wow.
And it's an entirely different way to play the game, because not only do they have to build levels and missions to account for, well, here's all the things that Corvo may or may not be doing based on player choice, or Emily, but this third option of the player has no superpowers, whatever. You're just moving through and mantling and trying to do stealth or combat with no powers. So it's an entirely different third way, really, to play the game, which just opens up that much more in the way of options.
That's awesome.
The chaos system is back again, right? So if you go around and make a big mess, people are gonna.
Yeah, one of the things they wanted to try and do was offer more in the variance of how things play out based on the choices. I think you'll see more of that now that Corvo and Emily are voiced, that they project and bring out more of that, how and what they're saying, as well as what they're doing, as well as how the story progresses.
Now, would you say that one of either characters are kind of suited to different play styles, or is it really just...
Absolutely not.
Okay.
No, that was really important to us, that it wasn't like, oh, well, Corvo is the kick-ass guy and Emily's the stealth guy. Absolutely not. You can play Corvo completely non-violent and never kill anybody start to finish. You do the exact same thing with Emily. You want to kick in the doors and do just terrible, awful things to bad guys with Emily. Absolutely. Now, they do it in very different ways based on the powers that they have, but you can still do any play style with either character. That was really important.
And so you are, you make your choice at the beginning of the game or near the beginning of the game, and then that's the path you take through that game, right? Or are you bouncing back and forth?
No bouncing back and forth. So you play the game through to a certain point. You hit this decision. We actually kind of give you a little glimpse of it, where they're sort of back to back in this confrontation.
Yeah.
You decide which one you're going to play, and then that's the character you play through the end. And then obviously, if you want to replay the game, you can go back and.
Cool.
Sure.
We are going to take a really quick commercial break, but when we get back, we're going to talk about that game with all the cheese wheels.
She has arrived. Who is she?
Our whole lives have built up to this moment. Now we've got to remind them, Earth is not for the taking.
Independence Day Resurgence.
That is definitely bigger than the last one.
In theaters and IMAX 3D, June 24th.
IGN's aerial footage of E3 is provided by Independence Day Resurgence, in theaters June 24th.
All right, and we're back. I want to know about Skyrim, and I want to know about it right now.
It's coming end of October.
It's coming to PS4 and Xbox One, and
all the goodness.
So I'm really excited.
Is that it? Are we done?
I'm excited, and I'm also terrified because I got extremely hooked on Skyrim, and I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna play some new games. no, I'm going to play a game I've already played, but it's going to be prettier this time.
I mean, Skyrim came out in 2011.
2011,
I think?
yep.
And I didn't really realize, like, I heard the music again and the chanting, and I saw the world, and I'm like, man, I miss that place. Like,
I tell you what, that for the number of years that I've spent working on the Elder Scrolls, and to hear even last night hearing that music swell up, it still gets me.
Yeah.
It's great, and yeah, so it's everything. It's all the DLC from Skyrim, all the sort of graphical updates and stuff that we showed in the video, mod support for both platforms.
Now,
the whole
that's something
thing.
I'm really curious about because that kind of just you can go nuts there. How what are the limitations for the mod support? Because I know in PC it's sort of it gets a little bit janky. You're kind of messing around there, and sometimes
does it work in a similar way to Fallout on consoles?
Very similar.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, Fallout 4 mod support has been out on Xbox One for 2 weeks, and PS4 we're still finishing up some stuff to get that out for PS4. But we're also evolving and working a lot of stuff and troubleshooting problems and issues that have come up. But the basic idea is the same, which is you're playing the game, and then at any point you decide you want to load that save game, and you pick which mods you want and which order you want to load them up and play. And if you find out something messes with your game or you don't like it, you just back that out or whatever you want. So, obviously there's going to be a lot of learnings here over the next few months as we continue to, address and refine. But it's just that. It's kind of just go nuts and play with fun stuff.
Now, one thing I'm really curious about, load times. Are those something that you guys have?
I mean, anything and everything that we're able to address, we are. So it's not just adding graphical features or making depth of field look nicer. It's trying to give you the optimal performing version of the game in every single way possible.
Man, that's awesome. On that note, Elder Scrolls Online is getting a Dark Brotherhood DLC.
Yeah, on consoles, right? It's been out on PC for a
Been
little
out
bit.
on PC for about a month. That's usually our cadence, as it comes out on PC first and consoles a little later, just the way that releasing games on all those platforms works. But yeah, it's out this week for PS4 and Xbox One as a whole new quest line and set of content for folks. If you're into the Dark Brotherhood, stabby,
Well, who's not?
assassin
mean person.
thing. Yeah, be a mean person and yeah, it's a lot of fun. Folks have really been enjoying it, and we can't wait to get it out for console folks.
And so can you actually just kind of unpack the one Tamriel stuff for me? I'm someone that I'm a lapsed ESO player, so it feels like it would be perfect for me to jump back in. And
It's basically just any of the ways in which players were separated from each other before go away. That's just the simplest version. There's no more like, well, I'd really like to go to this area, but the enemies are too tough there. That ceases to exist.
So, previously the game did the MMO thing where, like, this is a zone for levels 1 to 8, and this is a zone for 8 to 16. So
the
now
way that you'd have experienced previous Elder Scrolls games, you kind of just go and explore. That's the way you play ESO now.
Sure.
We don't wall off content now because, oh, you're in this alliance or you're this level. It's just designed to be a system that says, what would you like to do? You want to do it by yourself? You want to do people? Whatever that answer to that is, you go right ahead. Nothing gets in your way.
Sure. And we don't need to get too far into the weeds on this, but I am curious about if you are a super hardcore ESO player, you're in the game every day, you're raiding. I mean, what does that mean for you, if you're someone that's sort of in that end game content?
It depends on, so you're saying like, and I come in, I'm a total noob, and you've been playing forever, and you want to play with me?
Yeah, sure. Or just someone that, has gone through all the champion levels and is sort of at the top of that pyramid
Well,
right now.
we still have lots of content that we're continuing to add, so as you continue to play, you're still able to progress and evolve your character, but also to have an ability where players that have been playing for a really long time and have a friend come into the game, that there's a way for those folks to pair up together and experience content in a way that just haven't been able to before. So it's designed to bring down all those walls and barriers and just say, look, go whatever it is you want to go and do, it's totally fine.
And that's this fall, right?
Coming out this fall.
Yep.
Nice. Obviously, Fallout 4 was last year's big, wonderful thing. That was the second coming of whatever. Yeah, people loved it.
Or the fourth coming.
Yeah, forthcoming. But you got DLC coming out next week?
Yeah, we announced 3 new DLCs. The first one is Contraptions, which just adds a ton of new gadgets and stuff.
Rube Goldberg stuff?
Yeah, we see all the stuff that folks are building with the workshop and all these amazing inventions, and so we kind of looked at the kind of stuff that they were asking for or looking for to allow them to go even crazier. So we're doing beta testing literally right now, getting folks in to try it, and it'll be out next week.
And there's another one that's coming along that basically looks like an extremely HD version of Fallout Shelter, where you're actually...
Yeah, I mean, it's literally just one of the things that we got asked a lot about is I love building settlements. I want to build my own vault. And so this was, okay, well, let's figure out a way to let you build your own vault, and not just from a structural standpoint, but to really run with that theme. Okay, well, building a vault wasn't just about having a space that was underground.
Right.
It was about this idea of experimenting on your subjects and offering some of that in terms of things that you can do. So it's the whole kit and caboodle of building your own vault, populating it, experimenting on your subjects, protecting it from folks.
That's nuts.
And so you touched on this a minute ago. How much of this is stuff that you would have liked to have gotten in the base game but just couldn't fit it, and how much is feedback from people? You have sort of the flexibility to say people are really, really asking for X.
I think for the most part, the stuff that we really wanted to do in the game is in the game, and a lot of it is. Once you give the devs time to take a break from crunching to get the game out the door and throwing everything in it to finish it, and they're able to step back, sometimes there's stuff that they want to do that they hadn't thought of before, but once they're able to step back and say, okay, now that I can kind of see it and I can see how people are reacting to it, I have this really great idea for this thing I want to do here, this thing I want to do here. And so it's a mix of things that they wanted to do and reaction from fans and the kind of content they want to see.
That's bonkers. I love it. It's an RPG with shooter mechanics that sort of became a construction game where you're building stuff, and then all of a sudden it's also a simulation where you're doing experiments. That's quite a transition there.
So the last big DLC is Nuka World, is that right? And so that's amusement park. It's somewhere in the Pacific Northwest or Northeast, excuse me. Is there anything you can tell us about why we're there, what sends us there, or anything that might be happening?
It's the Nuka World. It's about the Nuka World amusement park and the people who have taken it over. It's a new faction, and it opens up a very different way to experience the game, maybe from any of the other factions that you've previously come across, and kind of changes what you can do and who you can be in the world. And it's lots of content, fun stuff to do, and a new place to explore. And
sure, cool. And that's the final Fallout 4 DLC, right?
That's the final one we've announced. I would never want to say for sure it's the last one we'll ever do, but we said we increased the season pass and said, look, we're going to do more than we planned. These three are kind of the more than we had planned, but we did more than we had planned last time. So I never want to say for sure this is absolutely positively it, but this is what we got on the docket.
Right on. And then finally, Doom. There's some DLC on the way?
Yeah, not just DLC. One of the things that we really wanted to stress before launch, and Marty talked about a lot in the video, was continuing to support the game across everything for folks outside of DLC as well as DLC. So lots more content coming for Snap Map for folks to create new stuff, single-player campaign content, lots more maps coming to multiplayer, new modes coming to multiplayer, and then maps coming in the DLC. So if you just bought the game, there's lots of new stuff coming across Snap Map, across multiplayer, and then the paid DLC, which is going to add some more maps and weapons and a new demon you can play as and stuff like that.
And there's also there's a demo out this week. Is that right?
And we announced that right now you can go to Steam, Xbox Live, and PSN and download the first level of the game to play for free. Kind of a throwback to the old Doom.
Are really just bringing back 1996.
Shareware. Well, look, one of the things that I think we enjoyed watching guys like you experience is the campaign. We hadn't really shown a whole lot of that, and so we wanted to figure out a way. Folks got to play the multiplayer and the beta and some of the stuff we did, but we said, look, the single player we've always really liked, and so this is something we kind of been working on and really excited to get it out to folks who haven't made the leap yet to say, look, this is. Forget about all of that other stuff on its own. The campaign is really, really good and fun and worth it.
So some really nasty stuff in there.
go download it and try it and see what it's about.
I got a question. Why is Doom guy so mean to that little robot? It's like the only thing on Mars trying to help him, and he's just punching it in the face.
He's Doom guy, right?
He's a really mean man. I didn't think he's so mean.
He's very angry.
He's an angry dude. Anyway, you guys have your own little festival you put on, a certain QuakeCon that's coming up pretty soon.
Yeah, coming up 1st of August, and in addition to all the tournament and competitions we do there, we're obviously going to have new information about Prey. We're going to have stuff to share on Quake Champions.
Awesome.
Yeah, I like that Quake has come
It's
back.
cool.
To Quake
Yeah,
on.
that's wonderful. I love that you have a event in place for it already, and I'm sure there's going to be other games you talk about.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We'll probably have more details by then around some of the Fallout DLC and future Doom DLC. So we need to get you guys down there.
All
to join
right.
it. Hey,
Sounds
listen,
good.
there's nothing like Dallas, Texas in August. Let me tell you.
With a bunch of gaming rigs all hooked up.
Lovely weather.
Goodness
it's only like
gracious.
105.
Wonderful.
It's great.
Sounds like a hell of a time.
Yeah.
Pete, thank you so much for joining us. Guys, we have Titanfall 2 coming up really soon, so don't go anywhere. I'll see you in a little bit.